Hello everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips. And I have a whole lot of different things to share with you today. Some screening test issues to talk about, what's happened to states as they've opened, and also the resistance is always fun to cover. But I'm going to start with this issue of screening tests. And as I've talked about this for a long time, since this whole debacle began, that there is a need to keep the fear going, and in order to do that you have to have lots of cases, and there is a high error rate on the tests and that sort of thing. So one of the best ways to continue a fake pandemic is to broaden the diagnostic criteria. And I found an article in The Lancet that suggests just exactly this. So the authors note that testing remains inadequate, so it's important to develop new symptom profiles to help identify people who should be quarantined. In other words, we can't test people fast enough, so what we need to do is be able, without any testing, to just say, oh, based on those symptoms, you definitely have COVID and you should be quarantined. So they suggest that the loss of taste and smell are highly predictive of COVID-19, and anybody who's experiencing these symptoms should self-isolate and assume that they have it. Now, before you say, well, that sounds like a good idea, there are many causes of the loss of taste and smell, and these include aging, especially after age 60, allergies, nasal and sinus problems like sinusitis or polyps, medications like beta blockers and ACE inhibitors, dental problems, cigarette smoking, head or facial injury, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and then just having a common cold or other type of viral infection. In fact, as much as 20% of the general population has a prolonged smell disorder, which means that if this idea were to catch on in a country like the United States, my gosh, you could gin up another 70 million cases just by saying, if you've lost smell or taste, then you must have COVID. Well, there are problems with the Lancet article, even beyond the fact that this is a ridiculous criteria. The basis for the recommendation to use taste and smell as diagnostic tools is data collected from patients using an online app. Almost 60% of the 579 people who reported testing positive said that they had lost their sense of taste and smell, but almost 18%, to the point I was making earlier, of the 1,123 who tested negative also said that they had loss of taste and smell. So I don't think you could gather from these data that loss of taste and smell should be like the test that sends people home to quarantine, unless of course you're trying to keep a fake pandemic going, and then it makes perfect sense. The researchers acknowledge many limitations, which include that the symptoms are non-specific and they lack predictive power, you think. And then their report relied on self-reported data, which is erroneously not accurate. Yet they write, I mean, after all this is what they write, quote, "We believe that having added loss of smell and taste to the list of COVID-19 symptoms is of great value." They say, "Our data collection method was not good. The symptoms are non-specific and not predictive, but we believe that having added loss of smell and taste to the list of COVID-19s is of great value, as it will help trace almost 16% of cases that otherwise would have been missed." In other words, this doesn't work except in this alternative universe we live in, where you can just make stuff up and people go, okay. I mean, I'm still amazed that anybody intelligent or educated or both can listen to this nonsense and read this nonsense and say, yep, we got a pandemic. Thank goodness we've got really smart people in charge, because without smart people like these people publishing in The Lancet, where would we be? Well, we'd be back to having a great economy, and kids would be in school, and we wouldn't have had so many suicides and overdose deaths and old people dying alone in nursing homes and all the stuff I've been talking about for the last few months, right? That's where we'd be if we didn't have people like this in charge. Fauci didn't sign off on this one. I was surprised not to see his name, because usually if there's something fraudulent going on, he has his hand in it somehow. All right, so I want to report on states that opened, and it's always difficult to report on data in this setting because you don't have a document in front of you. And by the way, I post the transcripts of the video clips with references where it's appropriate on the members site. And then you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that gets mailed to you. That's also free, but you have to be a member to get these transcripts. Anyway, the bottom line is that there's no discernible pattern that indicates that locking down or not locking down, opening after opening, there's no pattern whatsoever. In other words, if you were trying to draw graphs out of this, they would be all over the place, all right? So I'll try to make this as understandable as possible. So I'm going to start with, there were 7 states that didn't do lockdowns, all right? And those were Arkansas, Iowa, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Wyoming, all right? So we're going to talk about data in May, because May is the month when some states started to open up some more aggressively than others. So there was no difference for these 7 states over the period measured. Arkansas had an increase from 57 new cases in early May to 182 new cases by late May. Kaiser collected the data. And by the way, just the fact that we're focused on cases is so aggravating, because it doesn't matter how many people get the flippin' flu. What matters is how many people actually become very, very sick and die from the flu. So this whole constant, let's get everybody scared because there are so many new cases, there's more cases in Arkansas. Well, it doesn't really matter if there aren't more deaths in Arkansas. So they did have an increase. Nebraska declined from 408 new cases May 5th to 260 new cases on May 28th. So theirs went down. Arkansas up, Nebraska down. Iowa declined from 534 new cases on the 7-day average May 5th, 345 May 28th. So there's another one going down. Oklahoma, 102 to 100. So it stayed level. And so the bottom line is that these states flattened the curve without locking down, and there was no predictable difference. 1 went up, 3 went down, there were very few cases in the other states. All right, now states that locked down and then they started reopening. Texas, new cases of COVID-19 were about the same in early May at 1,079 as in late May, 1,049 after reopening. So everybody's home, and we remember the whole debacle about the woman opening her hair salon against the law. She got arrested. She was going to spend 7 days in jail and get a $7,000 fine and all that. Well, as it turned out, there's no difference when everything's all opened up versus when everything was all locked down. So why did we do that again? Oh, well, because we were making stuff up. Alabama, new cases nearly doubled during that same period. They went from 241 to 463. And again, we're measuring cases here because that's what everybody wants to talk about, but deaths is really what matters. I mean, none of us are saying, oh my gosh, I got the flu 3 years ago. That was so noteworthy that I think I should just bring it up to you, right? So the focus is wrong. Mississippi had a spike from 266 to 307 from early May to late May. Tennessee decreased from 520 to 388. They opened up, it got better. West Virginia, tiny number of new cases, 22 in the beginning, doubled to 49 early to late May. Utah remained the same. Indiana dropped from 635 to 445. So do you see what I'm talking about? It goes up, it goes down, it's the same, no pattern. So you're open, you're not open. It doesn't seem like any of these matters, which means why did we go through all this aggravation? Florida, with the nation's 3rd largest population, almost flat with 656 cases the day after it reopened to about the same number. So Florida's flat. South Carolina increased from 158 to 201 early to late May. North Carolina, which didn't reopen until May 21st, saw a big spike before and then after. So spikes go on, lockdown, and then after not being locked down. In Wisconsin, a week before, the new number of cases was 325. It went up to 441 by the end of the month. Not a big increase, but remember, they had an election with thousands of people out and about at the polls, and there was no increase back then. So what this basically says is, again, numbers are up and down and flat. It doesn't matter if you lock down or you don't lock down. The numbers aren't significant. They don't go in the same direction when you are locked down and then you unlock. There's just no rhyme or reason to it. And you would think that public health officials would look at this and say, it doesn't seem to matter. Why don't we just let everybody go back to work? Why don't we just open the libraries? Why don't we have kids' sports? Why don't we let people go to the movies and have a concert or something? Why don't we let the arts organizations get back to it before we don't have any of them left? But no, we're going to keep going on and on and on, and we'll let lawsuits make all those things happen. All right. I love this. On Friday, June 6th, the Michigan Supreme Court unanimously sided with a barber who reopened last month in defiance of the lockdown imposed by the Empress Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And here is a quote from the decision. It is incumbent on the courts to ensure decisions are made according to the rule of law, not hysteria. Boy, that about says it all. One hopes that this great principle, essential to any free society, including ours, will not itself become yet another casualty of COVID-19. And I read the decision from a judge in Illinois on another case where there was a lawsuit about business. And have you noticed that the judges are becoming increasingly clear in their decisions? It's like this, they don't say, it's not judicial protocol to say this is asinine, all right, but they say about the judicial equivalent of that, it's asinine. Carl Mankey is 77 years old. He's operated a barbershop for decades. He continued to cut hair even after being cited twice and having his license suspended. In an act of defiance, he and a whole lot of other barbers and hairdressers gave free haircuts outside the state capitol with other barbers and hairdressers. The picture online is just fabulous. You should go look at it. I'm sure the Empress was sitting inside fuming because when her subjects don't behave and follow her orders, she's very, very upset. He says, I needed to work and figured it was time to move forward, in a statement obtained by the Washington Times, but I feel like I've been ruled over with a heavy hand, not governed, and my constitutional rights have been trampled underfoot. It is high time for all of Michigan to stand up, open up for business, and for people in our community to show up in support. And that's basically it. These idiots are not ever going to let us go free, so we're just going to basically have to overrun them in numbers. All right, more on that later. I'll keep telling you. All right, I think that this next thing I'm going to share with you is real important because everything that is opening with such ridiculous restrictions and rules and all this sort of thing. I mean, the nail salons have to sterilize nail polish bottles before they put them back on the shelf after they do somebody's nails, but I can pick up nail polish at Walmart that's been touched by 50 people, no problem. That's an arbitrary, stupid rule, all right? So anyway, this is a member of a church who is basically saying, if the church doesn't stop the nonsense, doesn't stop going along with the nonsense, the person's just not gonna come back. So here it is. This goes to the Cardinal of the Catholic Church. These past months of unbelievable crisis have not only left me personally much like a refugee not able to return home, but more significantly heartbroken over the church I've been a member of for 28 years, abandoning on many levels all those who've been suffering. Multiple times a day I remind myself to quote the scripture, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Every parish that I'm aware of completely abandoned their flock of believers, leaving people to die alone, suffer without comfort, and be encouraged to be in a state of fear instead of faith, by the church continuing to buy into a government shutdown of human rights in the name of COVID-19 epidemic. Just like a medical doctor, priests take an oath to serve mankind in sickness and health. All sacraments were either canceled or severely restricted as COVID-19 became the God for us to all bow down to. I'm saddened beyond words as my heart breaks just writing this to you. As a faithful supporter over many years, with my husband serving as Grand Knight and me teaching Sunday school when my kids were young, I've embraced the St. Lawrence Catholic Church as my church home. Now I'm not welcome there unless I conform to the CDC ungodly and unhealthy restrictions and stay in a state of fear while in church. Singing is now deemed as dangerous to the health of those around us. Connecting through touch of any kind is not allowed. How can any church leader be oblivious to the suffering of the parishioners who look to them for spiritual guidance and comfort when they're most vulnerable? The church should be standing with faith in Jesus Christ and God as the ultimate healer and not buckle down to the demands of a godless organization like the CDC or the World Health Organization. I can't be the only one who feels this way, although many people are now caught up in the fear spread by the media, since they never received a different message from their church home, believe the evil message that dying or suffering without clergy support should be accepted, and that separateness is somehow to be accepted as the new normal. As a Christian, I refuse to follow this inhumane mandate. I will continue to pray for you to return to God's guidance in your decisions and stand for what is morally right instead of the commands from any organization to require an abandonment of your flock. If you're interested in actually knowing the medical truth about the virus, she suggests using my videos. Unless these policies change within the Catholic Church, I will not attend or support any Catholic events or services. And I think that some of what has to be done is that we, the people, have to basically say, we're not going to participate in this. So if you want us to come to church or synagogue or patronize your store or go to the library, we will be back when you're finished with this nonsense. Because really, what's happened is the stupid restrictions have made it so that things are opening up, but they might as well not be open at all. In other words, most of the restaurants in Ohio can't stay in business if they can only have 25% or 30% of their tables filled. And in fact, a group of restaurants sued the state of Ohio today, filed a lawsuit today, basically saying we're open, but we might as well not be open with all the stupid restrictions you've placed on us. I'm hearing from people every day who are saying, I hate to not be able to go to church, but I hate also to go to church and wear a mask and sit 6 feet apart. There's no fellowship involved in this if we can't hug each other and shake hands and sit together and sing together. What's the purpose of going? I mean, we are letting despots suck the life out of everything we do. They're basically turning us into automatons who wait for instructions about what we're allowed to do. That's going to end soon, believe me. But I think the beginning of it is just basically saying I'm not going to participate in it. And I personally would rather not go to a restaurant than be contact traced. I would rather not go to a library than wear a hazmat suit and not be able to browse. I mean, just if everybody did that, this would be over a whole lot quicker. So anyway, that's the COVID update for Thursday. As usual, pass this on to others who you think might benefit from watching it, and I will be back to you tomorrow with more news.